Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
Werewolf!
Werewolf?
There!
What?
Werewolf! There! Castle!
Why are you talking that way?
I thought you wanted to.
No, I don't want to.
Suit yourself. I'm easy.
Welcome to Wake Up Heavy, my weird dad's weird podcast about weird movies.
Hello and welcome to Wake Up Heavy, Recollections of Horror. This is Mark Begley, your host, and today we have a new installment in the Wake Up Heavy line of podcast episodes. This is the first of our special guest episodes. The guest brings the movie. It is one of their recollections of horror, a movie that they saw when they were younger that made an impression that I may have seen, may not have seen, or any other number of possibilities. And today I will be talking with one of my older friends, Ronald Dzerigian. This is my movie buddy. This is the guy that I have referenced in a number of episodes, who, after traveling around a few different spots during the 2000s, landed back in Fresno. We started hanging out, we started watching movies, morphed into pretty much watching horror movies, and that's where this all began. So I tasked him with picking a film. He did so. We have both watched it. I have watched a number of the sequels, and we'll be diving into that movie. Now, we also share some past experiences with the Season 2, Episode 2 movie for Wake Up Heavy, Suspiria, which we will also be talking about together. It kind of made sense to kill two birds with one stone, and so he will be on that episode as well. Two quick notes about recording. This is, both of these episodes will be done through Skype, and so it'll be a little clunky in parts, and there'll be some dropout and some weird stuff that happens through that application. I'm not bothered by that when I hear it on other podcasts. The other thing is we just got a new modem, and I noticed the other day when I was working in this spare room where I do my recording that it has a hideous whirring hum from the motor. It's the kind of noise that if you were locked in a room with it for more than 4 or 5 hours, it might send you into a homicidal rage. So I'm hoping that I'm far enough away to where it won't creep into the background of the recording, but I can't make any promises. Okay, enough from me. Let's get into this since it is not my show today. It is all about Ronnie and his pick. Let's find out what it is. So today we are here with Ronald Dzerigian, somebody that I have known for, 25 years now? You picked the movie for this episode, and what was the movie that you picked?
The Howling.
The Howling stars Dee Wallace Stone as Karen White, a news reporter who is traumatized after being attacked by obsessed fan Eddie Quist. She seeks help at the colony run by Dr. George Wagner to restore her repressed memories. Karen suffers from horrible nightmares. She hears constant howling at the colony and fears that it may be overrun by werewolves. The Howling also stars Christopher Stone as R. William Bill Neal, Belinda Belaski as Terry Fisher, Dennis Dugan as Chris Halloran, Robert Picardo as Eddie Quist, Elizabeth Brooks as Marcia Quist, and Patrick McNee as Dr. Wagner. The script was co-written by John Sayles, and the score is by Pino Donaggio.
What do you see?
The Howling. Somewhere in this city, in this human jungle, it begins.
Just try. He's right there.
What do you see?
What's there?
What do you see, Pierce?
What's there?
Somewhere in these woods, in this primal, sensuous, secret place, lies an experience too terrifying for words. And now, all anyone can do is watch and wait.
Tonight I'm going to show you something. Make you believe.
The Howling.
When did you first see it, and what impact did it have on you?
Well, similar to many of your experiences that you describe on your podcast, I saw it in the movie store. Every movie rental place that I went to had that beautiful cassette, and often it was the claws cutting through the flesh with the screaming face behind there. And it scared me, and I knew that I shouldn't watch it, so I never tried to get my family to rent it for me. But then when I was in middle school, my stepfather at the time had wired cable into everybody's bedrooms, so I had unhealthy access to
every boy's dream
to everything that I could want to watch and I shouldn't have watched. I think that if I remember this correctly, I was cruising channels and happened upon the transformation scene, the big one with Eddie Quist, where he says, "I want to give you a piece of my mind," and it scared the shit out of me. And I was already by then I was already really into horror films. I hadn't seen American Werewolf in London yet, but I was well versed in Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and stuff like that. But I had never seen anything as sweaty and gross and gritty as that transformation scene. So it was the key word is sweaty. I mean, it's so much gross sweat. But yeah, that really freaked me out. And so then I waited for it to play again. I don't know if it was the movie channel or something. I don't know. And finally it played again. I watched the whole thing, and it was the set design, the monsters, the conspiracy of the self-help group. Everything just clicked with me. I was living in the mountains, and I could imagine and see this happening. So it affected me on multiple levels.
Well, I saw it at, I think it was mid-'80s. I can't really nail it down because it didn't leave that big an impression on me, but it was at a high school party. We did these. People would have either Halloween parties. It wasn't a sleepover because it was boys and girls. Birthday, I don't know, Halloween, whatever. It was on. This is what you did. You rented horror movies and hung out and drank punch and pined over some girl that you were never going to date. And it played, and I was doing something else. I don't know. They had a game room, and I was playing pool or something. but other stuff was going on, so I wasn't paying real close attention. The only thing that stuck in my head was the campfire scene, that animation. And at that time, to me, comparing to a lot of the other horror movies that I watched, looked really cheesy. And that was my first impression. And I can't kind of let that first impression keep me from watching it, I think, until I honestly don't think I ever rented this on my own or saw it at any other point until a couple of years ago. I didn't catch any of the subtle references in the movie. I didn't really catch the full story that first time, and through the years would see a lot of different Joe Dante movies, and some of them hit, some of them missed, and so kind of knowing that he was the director of that, that wasn't a real big pull to go check it out either, until you get so into these movies that you figure, okay, I need to fill in some holes, I need to go back and reassess, and glad I did, because even with watching it yesterday for this show, realized just how good it is. And I've always been an American Werewolf in London guy, but this might become the number one werewolf movie from 1981 for me. Because of that story, because of all those things you just mentioned, I mean, this movie moves at such a fast click. It's like, I was watching it yesterday and I check the times every once in a while, either for cues for the show or whatever, and was surprised at how much time passed each time I looked. I mean, it moves. The pacing is great. There's something going on. You have the investigation side of it. You have the colony part of it. You've got different characters doing different things, wherein an American Werewolf in London, it's basically just, I can't even remember the main character's name, but it's really just his story, and there isn't a lot of side action. You get a little bit of investigation with the doctor, but yeah, I really appreciate it a lot more now, and I'm kind of glad we're doing it for the show.
Yeah, it's in watching it again recently too, like it's realized that it's just the perfect rainy day, waste an hour and a half experience. Every time I watch it, I never get up to go do something else. It's deeply involving every time. And plus, and this is another thing too. I mean, American Werewolf is like this in some ways, but every time I watch The Howling, the older I get, the more I appreciate all the references, and the more I feel like I learn about the horror movie industry and like little things just by watching that movie.
And it's more of an adult story than American Werewolf in London too. You've got grown-ups doing, they all have jobs, they're doing grown-up things, which is unusual especially for horror at that time. It was all centered around high school and college age kids, because that's who they wanted to go see the movie. And so that, as an adult, kind of hits a little bit better now than it would have when I was 15, 16, or 17. And then to kind of steer off track here just for a bit, you mentioned the other day when we kind of had our pre-chat about that opening scene and how it was evocative of the sleazy porno stuff in Taxi Driver, and that stuck with me throughout the rest of the day, and it was total coincidence, but Eddie Quist is basically a stalker. He's a celebrity stalker. He is obsessed with the Dee Wallace character, Karen White, makes her go down to the porno shop and all that. And at the time, obviously there were celebrity stalkers, but it wasn't a national phenomenon. It wasn't something that most people thought about, except that, prior to the movie opening, by like maybe a few weeks, is when John Hinckley Jr. attempted to assassinate President Reagan because of Taxi Driver and because of Jodie Foster, who he was stalking. So it was just kind of a weird, it's totally coincidence, but it really made me stop and think about that, and how much TV and her personality is important in the movie. I don't know how many shots of TV screens there are.
Oh, yeah.
How many people mention to her that she's quote unquote famous. And so that kind of enters into the subtext of that film, which I, would never have picked up on as a kid.
Yeah, no, I didn't pick up on that at all until later on. And then, of course, I didn't even see a connection until to Taxi Driver and the porno theaters, and also the connection to American Werewolf in London with that too. But the seedy aspect of the city didn't really. I just, as a kid, I just assumed that that's what the city was like. If you go downtown, and to me as a kid, the only equivalent I had for that was occasionally driving through downtown Fresno, and you just accept that. But absolutely, the creep factor is heavy there, and maybe the Howling is commenting on what was happening on the stalker aspect and what's talked about or what's displayed in Taxi Driver, and our fear of Times Square and all that stuff. Though I think that the Howling, is that supposed to be Los Angeles?
Yeah, it's in LA and filmed in LA. And actually on the kind of a weird thing that popped into my head, porno shop is on Western Avenue, and this is brought up, they actually filmed on that street. Mm-hmm. And over the police intercom, when they're driving around trying to locate her, they say something about Western and DeLongpre Avenue, and that is prime Bukowski territory.
Oh, yeah.
He lived on DeLongpre and probably walked those streets, so...
He's probably in the porno shop.
Yeah, probably. You mentioned the set decoration, and we've got to talk about Robert Burns.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of funny when you, again, as a kid, I wouldn't have known him from any other set director. We didn't even know what a set director did, but
right.
His list of credits, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tourist Trap, Hills Have Eyes, they all have that same look, and it's mostly in Eddie's room, but you've always got bones hanging from the ceiling with him. Must have carried that stuff around with him to every movie set, because it's in all of those. So, and apparently he has a little cameo in the porno shop. He's one of the customers. So,
is he the one that's like embarrassed and leaves when he sees her?
He must be, because I think he was an older looking fellow even at the time. Didn't do a whole lot, but he worked on some pretty influential films there.
That's I didn't even know. It wasn't even close to getting around to seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I saw The Howling. But there's some that organic pieces of bone and animal pelts and all that stuff that really resonated with me as a kid. And it's probably, this is very, I'm sure, very unhealthy, but or says way too much about me as a person. But I would, growing up in the mountains, I would see stuff like that, coyotes caught in barbed wire fences and just left to rot. And so in watching The Howling, and also not too long after that, I got involved with watching Twin Peaks. So these things, the deep woods environments where you don't really know what's going on, or people left to their own devices might be hanging carcasses in their living rooms, that seemed fairly acceptable to me.
Yeah.
Which is awful. But
well, that lends you a whole, just 20 to 30 miles away where I lived, wouldn't even have had that experience. So that's a whole other level, and that's great. This is how movies resonate differently with everybody. I would not have had that experience at all.
Yeah, I think that's why, and what I was trying to say earlier about the, what those movies are saying about the seedy aspect of an urban landscape. I think that also spoke to me too. This is what the city's like. This is what the city's really like. This is what's really going on down there in the downtown areas at night. You have Eddie Quist's and you have Robert De Niro's,
Right.
And that stalking and the danger of... And
the undercurrent of violence. And,
the undercurrent of violence. And
which, is on both sides, but the other side is the one that you have to be afraid of. Mm-hmm. When you brought this up, it's from 1981, the year of the werewolf. I went ahead and watched the 4 1981 werewolf movies and started thinking about what it was that that created this little mini.
Yeah, why were we obsessed? Why did our culture become obsessed with this at that time?
And I don't know. It was 1981, so Reagan had just taken office. It wasn't really a commentary on what would transpire for the next 8 years, obviously, because it hadn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to look at the 70s, and I guess it's kind of what they talk about in the movie. I think the one character that she befriends at the colony mentions, "Oh, I've done."
Before I hooked into Doc, I did it all. I did S, TM, Scientology, Iridology, Primal Screamers. I don't know. I figure another 5 years of real hard work and maybe I'll be a human being.
That was all going on during the 70s when everyone was trying to look within and find themselves. And the psychiatrist, Dr. Wagner, in the movie, talk about repression and letting out the beast from within and don't hide it and all that stuff. And that's which is strange, because that's exactly what he's trying to have them do at the colony is repress that.
I think that plays into like post-war, post-Vietnam, dealing with trauma and pulling away from or acknowledging the evil within, or what being forced into, acknowledging what our capabilities of evil. Maybe that's also why in the 50s we did a lot. There were movies about werewolves too. Post-war, the fear of the evils that we have inside of us.
That we inflict, and we're the monsters.
We're the monster.
As the decade went on, there were more and more, but there were werewolf movies in the 70s and 60s as well, but none of them really kind of hit like 1981. So out of those 4 movies, Howling, American Werewolf, Full Moon High, and Wolfen, I would have to say that Howling and American Werewolf still kind of stand the test of time. I still haven't seen Full Moon High yet, but Wolfen is, as you know, is pretty tedious to get through. I mean, The Howling and American Werewolf in London, I feel, are both acknowledging the history of horror films, and also conscientiously making changes to advance the genre. They're so well thought out, both of those. The humor, the terror, all the aspects that we needed to see to keep audiences in tune to, like, the Wolfman from the 50s. Well, let's talk about some of those references, because that's the stuff that I totally missed when I was a kid, and The Howling is chock full of them. And we've had this discussion before about self-referential films, and it's hit and miss with me. A lot of people, what comes to mind are the Joe Dante films, the Tobe Hooper films, the Fred Decker and Shane Black films, and a lot of those films are not favorites of mine from childhood, but I know that they really resonate with a lot of people my age or younger. With this one, I think it's a little more sly, and you have to be like a real werewolf fan to catch 90% of the references that Dante sprinkled in there. Yes, obviously having Howl in there, it gets a chuckle, or the wolf chili, but more to, the names of all the characters are directors of horror films. And of course they're fiddled with a little bit, so you have Fred Francis instead of Freddie Francis, or Terry Fisher instead of Terrence Fisher. But even then, I think if they had been straight, it's different than naming all of your characters Carpenter, Romero, and Craven, or everybody's going, their high school is Carpenter High, and that kind of stuff really bothers me. So the kind of deeper dive in The Howling I can respect a bit more. It was kind of funny listening to the commentary, because I know that they pointed out the Thomas Wolfe novel in something I've read. When you read the trivia or read the Wikipedia page, it mentions that, and I'm like, I can't spot that book in the movie. In the commentary, Dante mentions that the character Dennis Dugan plays is reading it in bed, but it's out of focus. So it's like a real deep reference because you can't even read the title of the book or the author's names. You're someone that likes that stuff more. So how does that work for you, especially in The Howling?
It's like the gift that keeps on giving. To me, I feel like The Howling represents, I mean, Joe Dante represents this, I think, like the movie nerds director, or at least horror movie nerds director. Like I love that he can make these subtle nods. I think about this constantly as a writer. Like if you're going to say something, if you're going to create meaning for your reader, or have that resonate with them, with your viewer or with your reader, whatever it is you're making, you want to have something on the surface that draws them in, but then you also want to embed these little secret handshakes. And I think that every time now at this point I'm familiar with all that territory in The Howling, but for years, every time I'd return to it, I'd be like, oh my God, that's that scene from The Wolfman, or oh my God, that's that, I'd forgotten that there was that scene from the, Three Little Pigs. Oh, and then, discovering that, an actor like Kevin McCarthy is in Joe Dante's segment in The Twilight Zone, and Dick Miller, of course, and these tie-in, like Joe Dante tying his material in with other people's material, and also tying his material in with his own material. Mm-hmm. Like that just is I don't know. I think that's a beautiful journey that we get the option to take. We can just watch The Howling and be scared, or we can watch The Howling and be informed. Yeah, that's so cool. Is that what you were asking me? I don't know. I got off on a tangent.
That's okay. Well, I do that all the time. Well, and he likes, he's one of those guys that has a loyalty to people, and Kevin McCarthy, like you mentioned, and Belinda Belaski, who plays Terry. Yeah, she was in a number of his films, starting with Piranha. I think she may have been in Hollywood Boulevard too, but I haven't seen that one. I don't know if he worked with Dee Wallace after that or not. I don't know if he ever worked with her again, or her husband. Obviously Dick Miller was in everything he did, probably used a lot of the same crew and stuff, and that comes from those Roger Corman years. And of course we have to talk about the Roger Corman cameo. And
oh my gosh, like that. I love that's something that, see, that's just an example. I would have never gotten that if I hadn't, and I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I think that The Howling and Gremlins are probably the reason why I became obsessed with 50s B movies. Does that make sense? Like, I think that's probably why. And I don't know. And so to me, like, that's, like, thank you, Joe Dante, for like giving me that little, planting that seed, and I can discover later on, oh my God, that's Roger Corman.
And we discussed this previously, but Roger Corman and Forey Ackerman, I would have had no idea who those guys were. I didn't really realize who Roger Corman was until The Silence of the Lambs came out, because I got a little bit obsessed with that movie, and I think I still might have them. I have a ton of magazines that had articles about it, and they mentioned all the cameos in that. So Jonathan Demme, another Corman student, did the same kind of things that Dante did, and he's got Corman in there, he's got George Romero in there, and probably a few other people. When they said, oh, he plays the FBI director, and I was like, oh, that's what he looks like. I mean, obviously, if you watch horror movies at all, you know who Roger Corman is, but you may not know what he looks like.
Right.
And so now watching it, in the little nod to Rosemary's Baby there with the phone booth, think, oh yeah. And then they've got him, of course, fishing for coins out of the phone, and ha ha ha.
I love that, right? Because he's the ultimate penny pincher. I love that. So that's anybody else watching that movie that's not, because tons of people have seen this film without having any interest in the history of horror films or the history of B movies or the history of movies in general, and not get that.
It may be that someone's like, oh, that reminds me of another movie I watched, or it may just pass them by completely, and it doesn't matter, because it stops the movie a little bit, but not enough to be like, why was that in there? because she's concerned at one point that it's him, Eddie Quist. So that informs the story as well, and then we can move on. So it works in any way you look at it. So I wanted to bring up the sequels real quick, just to go back to the difference between them, or at least the ones I watched, and the original. And so I watched 2, 3, and 4, and didn't have very much fun watching any of them. 3 was interesting. 2 and 4 were pretty much slogs to get through. And I don't want to. My point in doing the show is not to have a crap fest on bad movies, but it just made me think of the difference. And they're all low budget movies. I think the budget for the original Howling was $1 million. The sequels I don't know, but it's very likely that it was less. Even, with inflation and as the years went on. I think Part 4 came out in 1988.
I think in watching the extras on The Howling, the producer was talking about how Part 4 or Part 5, I can't remember which one, is essentially mostly just clips from previous Howling movies. So
that would have probably been Part 5, because Part 4 is original. Yeah.
That's right. Part 5, yeah.
That's a nice trick that people pull. A lot of sequels do that. I know that Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 got a lot of crap for reusing a lot of footage. That's never a good idea. So hopefully that trend has stopped. The difference in those movies, I think, lies on the creative team behind it. You can cover a lot of your budget by being creative, and they were very creative in The Howling. I have just one shot in particular, and I think this was on the audio commentary. They filmed in different locations throughout California. Multiple times mention, she's running in Mendocino here, and we cut to her running through Griffith Park.
Yeah.
And those are hundreds of miles apart, but the terrain looks close enough to me to where I wouldn't even notice it. But there's a shot where Dee Wallace they're in their cabin, and we have a shot of the outside through their window. And since they didn't have that terrain behind the window, the real window of that cabin, they made a fake window to get the shot that they wanted. And to me, that's the difference. Like, well, how do we get around this obstacle? Not a big obstacle. Well, fabricate a window, and then you can shoot whatever you want through it. And to me, that's kind of the brilliant thing about a person like Joe Dante, to tackle the hold that the budget has on you, and you do it, you become creative. And I think that that's where the sequels miss the mark, is that they don't rise above their budget, and they're fairly sloppy. There's no way to know the intent of the people behind it, but it doesn't seem like they care all that much, and it seemed like Joe Dante cared. So
yeah, well, that's the reason why any low budget film will last, if it has that care, that invested. And I think that's Joe Dante probably learning from Roger Corman. A lot of those movies are just horrendous. However, there's a lot of, in those early films, they could be boring, but they're nice to look at. And if you're looking at, the evidence of not caring is apparent in The Howling 2, just because there's nothing happening until the end, I guess. But then same thing with the fourth one. But the third one is like the not caring. Sometimes the not caring or the not rising above the low budget, like, works in a way that's both horrible and hilarious at the same time. And maybe that's why I like the third one, because it's not good.
If that's the cream of the crop, then I'm fine with being done watching 3 of the sequels, because I didn't, I have heard that one is, and on the Not Quite Hollywood documentary, it looked really fascinating, and it is the better of the 3 I watched, but it's still not that good of a movie.
Oh, it's just it. But there's something to be said about it. The weirdness. The disconnectedness of everything in that film, creepiness of the found footage, and the creepiness of the pouch, and the how these are were marsupials. And the connection to the extinct Tasmanian tiger.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And really, it was when I saw that. I think I saw that not too long after I first encountered the first one. Another late night viewing. It was right around the same time that I started to become obsessed with Australia and Australian movies. And so I can, even though The Howling 3 is a horrible movie, I can really thank it for opening up a whole world to me.
Well, and we got to talk about that one scene, the weird breaking of the fourth wall and mentioning that they're being filmed. To me, that kind of summarizes the movie for me, because it really had no bearing on anything. I rewatched that scene to see if maybe in another shot the crew had shown up or something and they were trying to cover that. No, I don't think so.
There's no reason.
It was very strange and had no connection to anything else in the film at all that I could remember. And I may have kind of tuned out after a while, so if it came back in later on when that character shows up again, I don't recall.
No, there's nothing. There's no reason for that scene. There's not even a reason for us to be introduced to that rich dude. Like, there's no reason at all.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, like, just kind of sloppy. And watching part 4, because that supposedly them going back to do the novel in a more, because so much has changed in The Howling from the novel, and in part 4 it's supposed to be closer to the novel, which I guess it is. Not having read the novel, I don't know, but just the descriptions that I've read. And it would be kind of interesting if you watched 1 and 4 back to back without realizing that and thinking, boy, this is, I've seen this before. This is very similar to the other one. Why did they do that? But I did have to note that, on IMDb, it states that the opening scene was filmed at the Radisson Hotel in Fresno. I don't know if that's true. I've never been inside the Radisson. This would have been the Radisson from 1988.
This is a nice place.
Yeah, it's a Radisson, so it's pretty good.
Right.
Which I don't think is the Radisson of today. It says it's across the street from Selland Arena, which we all, Fresnans all know. And it's just odd because the bulk of the movie was filmed in South Africa, and most of the exteriors, which there aren't a lot of, it's street shots of LA. So why they would come...
Why would they even do that?
There's got to be tons of hotels in LA that would have perfectly been fine for that scene. But, if it's true, then we've got a little hometown connection to The Howling 4. So that's my one positive thing to say about the movie. Although there is a really great transformation scene at the end of the movie that is super gloopy and really gross and slimy and kind of an interesting... basically, the guy just melts away and then reforms as a wolf. And I'm like, well, that's novel. That's an interesting way to do it. So I did like that.
Yeah, that's a cool moment. But you have to wade through all the...
Right. It's the last 10 minutes of the film. And part 2, I don't really have a whole lot to say about other than Christopher Lee is in it. Ferdy Mayne is in it. We have the very bizarre end credit sequence with
the post-punk scene and the post-punk band, and then the repeated reveal of Sybil Danning's boobs.
Oh, man. Somebody actually posted a GIF of that clip of her on Twitter the other day, and I said, well, if you watch this for a minute, you get the same idea as the end credits for The Howling 2.
Yeah, except you don't get that entire, really great song.
Yeah,
just to watch the GIF.
The song that plays, that's the only song that plays through the movie. I repeat it 4 or 5 times. That's another thing that kind of drives me bonkers with well, we've got this song, so let's just throw it in there every chance we get. And, oh, man. And then, which reminded me that it gets really confusing during the orgy scene. They're cross-cutting with that band performing, and it makes it seem like, it's the same location.
Like the band is there.
Right. And I'm going, okay, we know that the band is supposed to be in LA, quote unquote, and this is taking place in Czechoslovakia. So I don't know. Just kind of mess.
What year was that again?
I don't know the year of the sequels. I didn't make note of any of that.
Because MTV, is becoming popular probably, and probably they're just thinking this is going to be a great music video sequence for this band that's going to make it big and make us a lot of money, and they put their cards in one basket and it just failed. That's what I'm thinking.
Well,
but Sybil,
that would require some forethought. So I don't know if I
maybe
if
not.
I might.
Maybe not. I love that both Sybil Danning and Christopher Lee express their shame in being a part of that film.
Yeah, well, right. And Lee was in Gremlins 2 and apparently apologized to Joe Dante for taking part in the film. So
I love that.
You should never apologize for the work you've done. But yeah, I guess I can kind of understand it a little bit.
Well, apparently Christopher Lee was a very polite and thoughtful man. See, another thing too is seeing Robert Picardo and Dick Miller and Christopher Lee in Gremlins 2. I mean, obviously I knew Dick Miller was going to be in Gremlins 2, but having these are these little gifts that Joe Dante is giving us as viewers, like, here you go, there's a history here.
Yeah, and I had no idea that Robert Picardo was, one of those Dante staples, and I don't know, I think I was more familiar with him as a TV actor. He was in Inner Space, which I watched a lot back then in the VHS days, and I think it was probably on HBO constantly, and remembering him from it, but really didn't make the connection. And I don't know if he's in The Burbs or not. I know that Dick Miller is, and some of the other staple Joe Dante troupe. But yeah, I didn't realize that there was such a connection between the two of them until kind of doing research for The Howling. And this was their first work together. And see, there you go, that loyalty, and that goes a long way.
It's nice to see that. I don't know. That's happening elsewhere in the industry, but it's just every time I revisit Joe Dante movies, I feel like I'm welcomed into a family of sorts, which is a cool thing.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of reflects on the type of guy he is.
Yeah. Well, it must. I don't know.
He seems like a nice guy.
Seems like a nice guy.
So that's the other big part of this movie is the transformation scene and Rob Bottin. And boy, watching those extras, I'm pretty sure that he probably could have just let his chest hair and his neck hair grow together and played the final version of the werewolf in that movie.
I'm pretty confident that that's him.
What? I mean, that beard goes up to just about his eyeballs. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well,
his hair is amazing in that clip.
Yeah, there's a little window. There's an area for nose and eyes, and that's all you have. The rest is hair. Yeah, he is essentially a werewolf. I've not seen him in that state before. I've seen other images of him, but he is essentially like. No wonder he had a deep understanding of the wolf.
But it's interesting, the connection between that and American Werewolf, and where we get all the bladder effects. And although I think it's used much more extensively in The Howling than American Werewolf, the fact that Rick Baker left The Howling to go work on American Werewolf, the budget difference between those two movies is, I think, about $9 million. Mm-hmm. And it's apparent. I mean, the transformation scene in Howling is fun and gross and gloopy, and like you say, when he comes back, he's all sweaty and face is melted from the acid, and they did a lot with their budget. I like how they covered up some of the mistakes of overinflation or inflating too fast by inserting wonderful sound effects, crackly bones, and
man, I mean, in comparison to if you watch like the Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, the transformation scenes in that, which is predominantly, there's some practical effects, but it's predominantly computer animated. and you go back to the Howling and watch that, there's a visceral terror you get from watching this plastic stretch and pull and inflate, and you have the sound effects. The sound effects are really like what makes that all work. And also the speeding up of the shakiness of the body transforming. And there's like, and then you watch the transformation scene in American Werewolf in London, and it's so like clean
and smooth
and so much more believable. But both of those movies are better than accomplish a better transformation scene than anything I've seen since. I don't know if that's just me being, a child of the late 70s, early 80s and loving practical effects.
Well, it does make a difference. It makes a difference to your eye and thus to your brain that, okay, this is, whether it's a real person or whether it's a, latex head or something, it's a real thing and it's being caught on film in real time, and your brain recognizes that and I think appreciates it. And there's have you watched Wolf Cop?
Not yet. Gosh, I've been wanting to watch that. Okay,
so it came up on the Joe Bob Briggs show on Shudder a couple weeks ago, and I'd seen it before, but I hadn't watched it since. And, really great low budget transformation. And an idea I don't know that I've seen, I think I may have seen it in another movie, where basically it's just it busts out of the person's skin. And I think that's a really smart way to do it.
Yeah.
So you just wrap up, either appliances or a person in fur and then tear away the skin. And and it's real, and it's on, it's on film or digital, however they shot it. But it makes a big difference to have it be a real thing that you're looking at.
Something you feel like you could reach out and touch.
Right.
And with a werewolf, it's all about tactile quality. It should be. So any computer generated werewolf, I don't know if you ever saw those horrible Van Helsing and Van Helsing, and then the other one that Kate Beckinsale is in, this
Underworld or something.
Yeah, Underworld movies. It's like you're looking at a cartoon.
Right.
There's nothing about that allows you to feel like you could reach into that film and touch that fur. There's nothing about that. And I think that's probably, even the original Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr., it's like, it's beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and even with optical effects, it's still a lot more interesting because you're seeing makeup applied in steps, and then fused together. The on-camera stuff is always a little bit more fun for 80s kids. Yeah, CGI transformation is really kind of pointless.
This is just you and I complaining about kids these days.
Well, make it look super realistic, and I'm there for it. But,
yeah, exactly.
If it's smooth and cartoony, then forget about it. What's the point?
Well, that's what, and I know we're not talking about it right now, but that's what I love about the new Suspiria movie.
Yes, and that's a good segue. So I don't know if you had more on the Howling you wanted to discuss, if we missed any major points that we should have gotten to.
For people listening who haven't seen the marsupial, the pouch baby.
That pouch baby is cute.
Pouch baby is cute and terrifying too. Very Eraserhead at moments, and that's why it's worth it to watch that movie.
There's one thing I got to point out about Howling 3 that they got right on the nose. The movie that they're shooting, that they get this girl for, is Shapeshifters Part 8. And it just so happens that there have been 8 Howling movies. So they were a little bit prescient on that, and I got to give them credit for peeking into the future to see how far that franchise would go.
That's like a George Lucas moment right there. It's like he knew what this was going to be, and so did the producers of The Howling from the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be an 8-movie series. Get progressively worse.
So is there anything you want to point people to your Instagram, or I'm going to link your book on here, and
Thank you.
There's only 3 left on Amazon. Ronnie has written a book of poetry that everybody needs to go out and buy called Rough Fire, and I'll link that in the show notes. And then if you want to plug your Instagram, feel free. Your public Instagram.
Yeah, that's Skelevator.
SKELE_VADER.
Yes, so it's just pictures of my toys engaged in odd activities. Nothing sexual.
Yeah, no,
let's get that straight.
It's not that Instagram.
No,
it's not that kind of Instagram.
But yeah, that's fun to look at. That's where
you have eBay auctions every so often.
Hopefully, Super 7 will make some Howling reaction figures. If anyone from that company is listening, they should get on that. We need it. We need an Eddie Quist.
It's probably a rights nightmare.
And we need a Slim Pickens as well.
Oh yeah, didn't talk about Slim or John Carradine.
If I could be a person, if I could be a movie actor, I think I'd want to be Slim Pickens. I was thinking about this, or Dick Miller. Like they could just be in anything.
Yeah.
And not super committed. Never big roles. Just like a beautiful presence when they're in there.
You know, it was kind of interesting watching this yesterday. John Carradine. It was a little bit bittersweet because it seemed like it was sort of a commentary on his career. You know, I want to end it all. It's not, talking about his teeth are being worn down, and I just thought, yeah, that was probably very true to your life at the time.
Yeah, right. I and I know this is a stretch, but it's because I teach this book to my undergraduate college English students. But I keep thinking whenever I see The Howling now, I think about when I see John Carradine's character, I think about this character in the human comedy, Willie Grogan, who's the telegraph is really on its way out, and he's like sort of the last person doing this, and every monologue in the book is sort of like a sad take on what is my life now, and then he dies. And I feel like watching John Carradine, I get that same feeling. It's like he's on his way out, and what is he left behind? So it's a little sad.
I don't know how long he lasted after that, but it was probably for a good another 5 years or something. So being a little bit premature on.
Is that his last movie?
I don't know.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
He died in 1988. See, so he lasted a good another 7 years.
Oh, he was in Peggy Sue Got Married.
Oh my God. Oh, that's a movie. That's the beginning of Nick Cage just going batshit crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
All right, Ronnie. Well, I will see you on the other side of this, and we will talk about Suspiria.
Sounds good. Mark, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And this is, you were my first thought for a co-host before I promptly gave that up, realizing that it was going to be a nightmare to try to get anybody that had as much free time as I did to do this. So we're hitting that today with 2 episodes.
We made it work.
There was one thing that I wanted to bring up that Ronnie and I didn't get to in this discussion, and that was the score by Pino Donaggio. He did a lot of work with Brian De Palma over the years after Bernard Herrmann passed away. His first film score was for Don't Look Now, which I have brought up a number of times on the podcast. He did the score for Dante's Piranha, which is what led him to David Schmoller to him, I should say, to do the score for Tourist Trap. I never really noticed it, but when I bought the DVD, the music playing over the titles at the beginning, the main titles of the DVD itself, sounded super familiar. I realized, this sounds a lot like the music from Tourist Trap. So I wanted to play a little comparison. First, we have some of the score from The Howling. And then this very short clip from the Tourist Trap score. Thank you very much for joining Ronnie and me on this first special guest episode. I think he did very well for his first time. I popped his podcast cherry. And you will hear him again on the Suspiria episode, which should be up in about a week or so. Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to wake up heavy. Here's some more of that score for you to play us out.